One of my good friends is here. She's our speaker tonight. I'm going to find the bio. I lost it again. So, her name is Cyndi Lamm. She is the reason I asked her to come tonight is there's several reasons. Number one, I serve on a board with her, and so I really know her character is great. The second thing is because she's been on the city council, so she might give us a few nuggets on that. The third thing is she, at one time in her life, was homeless, which is pretty amazing because now she's a lawyer, and she owns real estate, and she was on the city council, and on and on and on. It's super cool. And the reason I asked her here tonight is to kind of tell her story. But as we were sitting down talking after our board meeting, she's getting to the point where she's getting ready to liquidate her real estate holdings. So she's going to talk a little bit about that too, and about what that looks like for her. But it's really cool to have her here tonight. I really look up to her because of all the accomplishments that she's had. So let's give a warm welcome to Cyndi Lamm.
Thank you.
Hold it real close.
Real close?
There you go. You almost have to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. First, I want to start with a disclaimer. Because he announced that I had been on city council, which I was, I want you to know not everyone in government favors raising your taxes. Honest truth. I fought it a lot. So I'm so glad to be here. I did come from humble beginnings, and sometimes I've told my husband over the years, I seem to like collecting houses. And I think I trace that back to I had a really confusing childhood, did great in school but didn't finish, was a high school dropout, ended up on the streets right here in Lincoln, sleeping under park benches, and just, you know, in case you know, someone under is safer than on the park bench. My life seemed to be going like a lot of places nowhere, but I always had a dream. And one of my greatest sayings is that there's no expiration date on dreams. And I'm so glad of that. And real estate is a way to make dreams come true in the United States of America. As Lance had referred to, if the economy is good, people need some place to live, right? You have people moving in, you have students moving in, you have renters. If the economy is bad, people can't buy, they need a place to rent. And so it really is a win-win situation for investors, and I have been just very pleased to be involved. So, two dreams. I had a dream of having, you know, my own steady house. My parents were each married 4 times, so stability wasn't really one of our things. And of being an attorney. And about, 3rd grade, I was reading everything I could about Perry Mason. Anybody heard of Perry Mason? Yeah. So I was reading everything I could, and I decided I either wanted to be a private investigator or an attorney. And then I thought, no, private investigators spend too much time alone. That's not my personality. So I spent years and years wanting to be an attorney. Even though I dropped out of high school, that obviously isn't the road to becoming an attorney. But my life was pretty confusing, and I had people step into my life and say, no matter where you've been and who has formed you as a young person, let me tell you this, you're in charge of what happens from here on out. I had a judge tell me, if you get in trouble now after you're 18, you're in real trouble. It's not a slap on the hand not that I was in any real trouble, just saying. That's what he told me. And one thing he also told me was, if you ever build a criminal career, you'll never be a lawyer, in Nebraska at least. So I kept that in the back of my mind and worked hard. And I met my husband when I was 20, and we met in Colorado. Moved here, had a couple kids, and spent a lot of years with too much month at the end of the money. And I didn't like that very much. So we started working towards other things that we could do, and thought about property for a lot of years. The door got kicked open for me to go back to college and to get a law degree. And it was at that time, I mean, I always had it in my mind, I wouldn't ever let us move someplace where I wasn't close to university, because I always knew sometime I would return. And sure enough, I did. I went to the University of Nebraska, and I started out at Southeast Community College, and then I got scholarshiped all the way through the University of Nebraska, all the way through law school. So that door didn't just open, it got kicked open, right? And I thought, this is what I've been saving for. Aren't I glad I don't have a criminal record? Because I did get to be a lawyer. Oh, by the way, they do let criminals be lawyers in California, but not in Nebraska. So, yeah. So Tim and I were building a life, and we came here. We lived in California for a short time. That's where I was born and raised. Spent several years in Nebraska, several years homeless in Lincoln on the streets. And I was determined. I can remember one of the things that when I was leaving Nebraska once, I can remember saying, they don't really have great apartment buildings here. Now, that was a long time ago, but I said, someday I just want to come and own an apartment building. And so that was one of my dreams also on the back of my mind. So I read things. I read a very voracious reader, paid attention to stories like I'm hearing here tonight, people who made a difference, that they got into the market. They weren't never necessarily shepherded in by family, although I don't think that's a bad thing. It's nice to have people that give you that kind of advice. So after law school, I was able to clerk for one of the Nebraska Supreme Court judges, which was awesome. I got exposed to about 300 cases over 2 years, all different areas of law. I remember sitting next to a student one time, and I was answering some questions about landlord-tenant law, and she said, how do you know so much about landlord-tenant law? And I said, well, because I've been living it since before you were born. Kind of maturity has its advantages, but so we always had this in the back of my mind. When we moved to Nebraska and bought our first home, we rented the home for a year, and the owner, bless his heart, he came over to fix the furnace or something one day, and he said to my husband, when are you guys gonna just buy this thing from me? And we're like, whoa, nobody ever said that before. That sounds intriguing. We wanted to wait the year to make sure nothing was broken in the winter. And we waited the year, and then he sold to us on a land contract. And we were introduced to owner financing, and we were thrilled, right? And that was where we raised our children. Didn't really do much more investing than that until they were grown, and always still working through too much month at the end of the money. After law school, things picked up a little bit for us economically, and in 2005, my mom passed away. In 2011, my stepdad passed away, and they had 6 children between them. So I was one of 6. I'm actually one of 13, but that's my other dad's moms. So this set had 6 of us children, and they never really. My stepdad never made more than $40,000 a year in California, raising 6 children, which is very impressive to me. I can't do it. I can't do it in Nebraska. So, by the way, I don't have 6 children. I just have 2. So I knew where my limits were. They left their house to the 6 of us children, and so after the sale of the house in California, each of us walked away with about almost $40,000. Very happy with that. Didn't know where it was going to go, but it doesn't sound like a lot, but we were determined to do something with that. And the next house that we bought was my grandmother's house. And it was so deteriorated that banks wouldn't loan on it. We took a chance and got my brother involved, and we bought it for cash. We remodeled it for cash. Meanwhile, Craigslist. So I love owner financing, and I love creative ways to find real estate. I started just going over Craigslist every minute I could, and we ended up finding on Craigslist an 8-plex in Superior, Nebraska, and I'm like, this can't be. And so we drove to Superior, we looked at it, we crunched some numbers, we went back, then I approached them about the owner financing, and they were like, well, we'll think about that, but we would want our full ask. I was okay with that. I mean, obviously, it was my renters that were going to pay for it. Cute little town, and we went in and closed on that after we made a deal. Haggled about it a couple months, and walked away with $1,500 down and an 8-plex. It was amazing. We paid interest only for the first 2 years because it needed some repairs, and we needed that in order to cash flow. We had to make sure we didn't have a big payment. Did that, and then sold it 5 years later and tripled our money. In addition to having rent all that time. So we love owner financing. So of course, that's where we started, right? We did conventional financing for our family home after I was destined for law school, and we thought we were going to Florida, and then my daughter was going to have a baby, so we bought a house here in Lincoln, and that's why we stayed for university law school. In the meantime, Craigslist became one of my best friends. I was telling these folks over here that I found a deal in there. I said, listen, there's somebody that's very highly motivated. They want to sell their 3 houses, and they're willing to go, it looks like as low as $135,000 for all 3 together. Wow, that's great. So when we talked to him about owner financing, and he said, well, you know, the only thing that I need, and that's the key, what does the seller need, right? What do they want? What do they need? Is it paid off? Yes. What we need, he says, is I just need to not make more than X number of dollars a year, because it will interfere with my retirement of some kind. And so he said, see if you can make the numbers work. And I worked for hours on that. And the only way it would work is if we did it for a specified amount of time. And I told him, we need to have 1.5% financing. He said, done. I was, wow, okay. So then I looked over and I saw their bags were packed. They were headed to Colorado in 2 days. That's why they were so motivated. It was wonderful. So we got those houses, and of course you might imagine they weren't the highest end houses, but we were able to rent them for a number of years and then sell them one by one, and making tremendous amounts on our investments. But they were really older, so we were wanting to not keep them. We knew there were problems coming, and we want, we're not the homeowner that wants to be invested in this property. So we found that amazing, and then we went on to acquire a number more properties, and we started selling those. We started selling off several years ago, paying off other properties as we got to that balloon payment, and then we're finding out that our children, who we had thought would, this would be our dynasty and they would take care of our rentals, they weren't really interested at all. They weren't even interested in helping us hardly, but they were grown by then and they were in their own ways. And so we started thinking, well, maybe we just need to divest ourselves of our property, and we ended up just recently moving to a wonderful, wonderful acreage out of in Firth. Anybody who invests in Lancaster County knows why. Property taxes and the fact that the mayor and I don't really get along, so at all. And so as we're divesting ourselves of our homes, we're putting all that money into the acreage that we have now in order to pay that down and own it outright, and then to put together what we're going to live on in retirement. Although we have little bit of savings. So I would say that real estate is the thing that dreams are made of, right? Dreams don't expire. I didn't start early. My husband and I didn't start early in investing. We couldn't. But when we could start, we started and we found creative ways to do it. The house that we bought when I was getting ready to go to law school is the only home we've bought with conventional financing. Everything else has been seller financed. And you're absolutely right. The seller loves it when you explain to them about I'd rather pay you the interest any day. And it's just a matter of building that relationship and finding out what it is the seller needs. People want to get out of their property if it's up for sale. And sometimes even if it's not. We bought a house several years ago across the street from us. I had gone in and looked at it once when it was for rent, fell in love with it. Told my husband, I'm in love with that house. I want that house. So for about 2 or 3 years, every time the landlord came over and mowed the lawn, my husband said, how long you want to keep mowing that lawn? And he's like, what? Finally, he got intrigued, and we went and sat down and had dinner with he and his wife, and then we owned the house. And this is the one that we sold just a couple months ago. It got an all-cash offer over our asking price. It was just an easy sale. It was a beautifully maintained home in a college area, and it was about buying right. So I just want to encourage anyone to, if you can do it, get involved in that kind of thing. If I would have realized we could have purchased homes on seller financing years ago, we would have done it because we never had any money, right? So that's a happy end to our story. We have our dream house, our forever home, I'm calling it. We have a few rentals left. Some we have on the market, some we don't. And we know you can't divest too fast where you're cutting off your income stream also, especially when you're moving into retirement. But for this girl, I learned a lot on the city council about the taxes. Now I'm at the legislature. I work in the Natural Resources Committee as legal counsel. And so I do pay attention. I think some of you know Kyle. Is it Fisher? Well, anyway, I try and reach out to folks when I see legislation that's going to affect homeowners and investors, because there's plenty of it. There's a couple senators that really want to let your tenant live in your home whether they pay their rent or not. There's this whole sweeping movement of squatters throughout the United States. And so these are things that we have to stay ahead of, figure out how to not let that happen in Nebraska, make sure that our laws are protecting landlords in addition to renters, because we haven't seen a lot of that in recent years. But I would invite you, if you are watching a bill and you think that it may be somehow affect you as a landlord, I'd invite you to call me. And 34,000 people in Lincoln have my phone number, so let me just give it to you. It's that's from my time in office. My number is 402-432-9770. And if I don't have it at my fingertips, I can find it, that's for sure. And I'm very active at the legislature, very aware. I work with a group of fine people that are staffers and attorneys, senators that are there to serve you. And I'm one of the fewest attorneys that actually have rental properties at the legislature. So I want to just invite you to call me, let's have a conversation. I love how Lance makes himself available so long as Scooters is involved. I think that's so clever. So I would be happy to, I know this is probably shorter than your usual programs. I just thought I would share my story, how my dreams came true, how real estate helped, and encourage you to encourage other investors to get involved and ask if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, did I mention I ran for mayor too? Oh, okay. So I do know a few things about the laws in this city and this state. So, anybody, questions?
Did you 1031 exchange any of your properties into the one you're living in now?
We did not because of the nature of the property, which is the 1031 exchange would require that it be an investment property, which it is not. It's our home. So, thank you for asking that.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So how the capital gain affecting you?
I'm sorry?
When you sell your property, right, you have to pay
The one she's selling, how are the capital gains affected?
Oh, the ones I'm selling? So the one that we sold for all cash earlier in the summer, that was our residence for 3 out of the last 5 years. So there's no gains on that. Otherwise, we just bought them right. And so even though we've made good money on them, taxes have been minimal. I do have an accountant who's amazing and have had him since before we owned any property. And so he helps us negotiate those waters. But we tried to list 3. We listed 3 as an investment group at one time, and it wasn't moving fast enough. We were starting to see interest rates go up, and so we didn't get enough people through. So we split them up, sold them as single family, and they sell better. So.
And we have an 18-month lease on one of the properties.
Yeah.
So that won't sell until after Cyndi retires, so our income will be lower.
Yeah.
So our capital gain will be a lot lower.
We think we have a plan, but.
And that's all with you've set that with your accountant to figure that out?
Yes, accountant and financial planner, yeah.
Financial planner.
Yeah. So.
it. I know another retired landlord that she sold a couple of her property, and she went in and paid capital gain over 100,000. That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Be careful on capital gains.
I'm sorry?
She's just talking about capital gains.
Yeah, so we have paid some capital gains. We've really worked to sell properties in years where it was, there's an ebb and flow in how they tax their capital gains also. And so I think the top amount we did pay on one property a little over 10,000 in capital gains. But when you're doubling and tripling your money, somehow that doesn't seem to be as bad. We studied both Richard Kiyosaki,
Yep.
and also we also try and live by Dave Ramsey. So we want to be debt-free, but we want to use other people's money to build our wealth. And I think that real estate can help you do that. Yes?
Can you give us like the 2-minute version of what the Natural Resource Council is and how the work that you do ties into real estate in the legislature?
Sure, thank you. I work, it's the Natural Resource Committee of the Legislature. So whenever someone tries to introduce a bill or make a law that has to do with natural resources such as water and electricity and energy, net metering, solar, and so forth, we're involved in that, and my role is to actually break down the bill and make sure it's constitutional, run it through tests, and point out to the committee, give them a report, and anything that jumps out to me so that they can be changes. My job is also to facilitate any changes. I sit at hearings, and I visit with people. Lately, it's been the energy sector. We've been very involved in the energy sector. And that has to do with some of the things with renting and where people are going to live, and are we going to go through blackouts, which we experienced in February of 21. But mostly I get to, because of the committee I'm on, doesn't get a huge number of bills. We also deal with natural resources district and hydroelectric power. And so because we don't get the measure of bills that like the judiciary does, it gives me the freedom to review every bill that comes through. There were 800 bills last year that came to the legislature, and I can review them and look for the ones that I know are going to stick out because for landlords, tenants. So.